I, 22M, broke my partner's 33NB trust. Summary. I, 22 male, failed to inform my non-binary partner, 33 non-binary, about plans I made with someone else because I canceled those plans before I had the opportunity to discuss them, and I missed the chance they provided me. How can I regain their trust without feeling inferior in the relationship? I have compromised their trust in me. I worry that sharing this online will only exacerbate the situation when I eventually tell them, as they will undoubtedly recognize that this post pertains to us. I, 22 male, have been engaging with my significant other, 33 non-binary, for approximately 5 months, whom I will refer to as Elise. At the outset, we both emphasized that we were not expecting to find a romantic partner and were not prepared for a serious relationship. They recently exited a significant and complicated partnership last summer. They clearly articulated their desire not to have our lives deeply entangled, as they sought freedom, care, support, and the ability to connect with others in a way that felt right, including sexually. Initially apprehensive about entering a non-monogamous and undefined arrangement, I gradually found comfort in the ambiguity, which helped me accept that I would not be the only person they were involved with. We grew very close at a rapid pace. We have encountered challenges in our communication. Late in January, they met up with an individual they had been conversing with for a casual evening of enjoyment, and they informed me of this the following day. This was the first I had learned of this new partner, a male in their 20s. I was unaware they had been talking to someone and did not know the nature of their outing that night until they disclosed it. They shared this information because we were about to become intimate, and they felt I deserved to be aware of any potential risks. They were apprehensive about telling me beforehand due to a past experience where I became upset after finding out they were intimate with a friend I was aware of and had met, not realizing they intended to engage in more than just messaging. Although I was hurt that they hadn't communicated about this new person sooner, I did not express how excluded I felt, as if I were shut out from their life. I endeavored to be supportive and told them I was happy for them. I understood their fear of disclosure. They are still seeing this new partner, and things are progressing well between them. On the night I learned of this, I informed them that I had begun speaking with a friend, Greg, a 29 male, with whom I had previously been intimate and might have the potential for intimacy again. Admittedly, my motivation for rekindling the sexual element of that connection stemmed from a desire to feel equal to Elise. I was uncertain about whether Greg and I would reach that stage and needed to determine that he was genuinely invested and not solely interested in sex. I aimed to engage with him on a friendship level prior to anything else. I shared my uncertainty and curiosity about Greg with Elise, excluding the aspect of desiring equality. Later, I discussed meeting Greg on the weekend following Valentine's Day, but canceled before it could approach. I did not inform Elise of our plans and canceled before I could mention them. I was preoccupied with the concern of Elise discovering my platonic or sexual interaction with Greg after it had occurred. I only focused on ensuring they knew before I visited Greg. Since I no longer had confirmed plans to meet him, I did not believe the situation was urgent or damaging to our relationship. Fast forward to just before Valentine's Day. They discovered self-harm marks on my body, which I had intentionally avoided discussing. I did not want to confide in anyone about my habits, and they felt hurt by my secrecy, which seriously affected their trust in me. We reconciled and officially adopted the labels of boyfriend and girlfriend in time for Valentine's Day. We engaged in an extensive conversation about whether I was hiding anything else from them, as they insisted on being made aware now because they felt unable to trust me otherwise. Effective communication is essential to them, and they require complete transparency and trust to feel secure. They have experienced enough deception in the past. I informed them that I was still in contact with Greg and had lingering uncertainty about our relationship, but did not disclose the canceled plans. I thought stating that we were merely talking and things were progressing well, but that I was unsure when we would meet was an accurate representation of our situation. I now recognize this was not complete disclosure, and I should have explicitly conveyed everything Greg and I had discussed. The plans were for that weekend, yet they had already been canceled. That indicates we were still just talking, right? I feel foolish. As conversations related to Greg arose recently, I mentioned the plans we nearly had, as they were pertinent to the discussion. Elise feels betrayed and believes they cannot trust me, feeling that I concealed information from them even after claiming to be completely honest. They stated it would have been acceptable if I had just mentioned it sooner, and now they feel as though I'm making them question their own intuition. It's not that I intended to hide things from them. I thought I provided ample information. For them, simply talking implies no plans for a meeting. Additionally, they perceive that meeting inherently suggests an intimate encounter in this context, leading them to feel misled by me. Given our previous discussion about communication before Valentine's Day, I should have recognized my obligation to clarify that specific issue. I feel hurt knowing they can wait until after a sexual encounter to inform me, yet I am expected to disclose canceled plans. This feeling of hurt seems irrational because we had grown closer and raised communication standards through our earlier conversation, and I trust they won't be intimate with someone again without informing me first. They have expressed how crucial it is for them to know all relevant details. I am relieved that they did not discover this through another source, but I acknowledge I informed them too late. There are multiple layers of pain. Lately, they have been feeling unsupported as I have been preoccupied with work and family matters, and I have not been present in the way I typically am, whereas they have been incredibly supportive of me during difficult times. On the day the discussion about meeting Greg occurred, I broke the agreement we had regarding our conduct at a sex club. I distanced myself briefly when we both expressed anxiety and a desire to stay close, which made them feel abandoned. All of these factors contribute to the overall distress they feel regarding my error with Greg, and each element damages their trust in me and our relationship. I am left wondering how I can restore their trust while also trying to feel equal in this relationship. I cannot continue to hurt them like this. I apologize for the lengthy account, and I appreciate anyone who took the time to read it. Also, Elise, if you happen to come across this, please share anything you need to say, and more. I regret seeking advice from strangers and empathize with the turmoil you must feel. Story 2. Am I the asshole because I told my sister that any and all business she had with my husband is my business? A few days ago, I celebrated my birthday, and it did not end well at all. While my birthday is not a significant occasion for me, it holds importance for my children, which is why I allowed my husband to do the bare minimum for me, primarily to give my kids the chance to sing and enjoy cake. As the middle child among 3, with an older sister and a younger brother, I requested a simple dinner gathering with just my mother, my siblings and their partners, along with their children, to mark another year of my life. After dinner, everyone dispersed around the house and yard, engaging in typical social activities. Out of the blue, my sister approached me asking where my husband was. I informed her that I had no clue, but he was likely in the garage, where he often spends his time tinkering with his tools. Since her husband was unable to attend dinner due to work obligations, my husband was mostly doing his own thing during the event. They get along well, so when we gather, they usually spend time together. My sister mentioned she had already checked the garage and he wasn't there, so I replied that I didn't know where he was and returned to chatting with my brother. Shortly after, she came back asking again about my husband. Once more, I was unsure, having been in the same spot with my brother all along. When she inquired for a third time, I told her I still hadn't seen him and asked what she needed him for. She bluntly replied that it was none of my business. I was taken aback and felt quite disrespected. I told her that it absolutely was my business, as he is my husband and she only has a connection to him through me. I admit I said this with a bit of an attitude, but her response caught me off guard. She essentially accused me of implying that she had intentions towards my husband, which was not at all where my mind was. This exchange escalated into an argument, during which I was called a derogatory name a few times. While we didn't yell, there was a noticeable tension, and I dropped a couple of expletives. I have a tendency to curse, even when I'm not angry. My mother, who was nearby, said my reaction was unwarranted. My brother claimed her comment about it not being my business wasn't such a big deal, suggesting that she might have wanted him to assist with a surprise for me since it was my birthday. He didn't think I overreacted, but felt that the entire disagreement was pointless. My sister gathered her children and left in anger. Was I in the wrong? Given that she had been looking for him for a while and had asked multiple times, I didn't believe I overstepped by asking why she needed him. Perhaps I could have assisted her. For context, my sister often asks my husband for favors, such as checking her car. He enjoys working on vehicles as a hobby or helping her move heavy items, even with her husband present. If she shows up at my mother's house with numerous items, she will ask my husband for help, among other things. He is always active and accustomed to being helpful, just like his brothers. He is also not fond of being rude, so he rarely declines requests. This dynamic may have contributed to my discomfort. I do not feel the need to ask her husband for favors in the same manner since I have my own husband. Even if I were to ask her husband for anything, I would certainly inform her of it. He is her husband. Edit update. Wow, I did not expect this post to gain so much attention. Since the incident, I haven't spoken to my siblings or my mother. To clarify, my husband was not hiding or avoiding anyone during the gathering. It's essential to mention that we live in a spacious house with a large yard, so my sister may not have searched thoroughly enough to find him. After everything settled down, I asked him where he had been during the event. He came inside puzzled after my sister left with her children, wondering why they had departed. It turns out he had been moving around during the festivities, playing with the kids at one point, chatting with the neighbor while sharing a beer at another, spending time with my dad, and yes, even in the garage at various intervals. I advised her to check the garage, as that's typically where he goes when he isn't immediately visible. When my brother-in-law is around, he's easier to locate because they tend to congregate in one area, but my husband is always active. He relaxes only when someone is there to relax with him. Otherwise, he continuously moves about. Some people believed he simply set up the gathering and then disappeared, which is incorrect. He actually celebrated with me and interacted with everyone, although we were not attached at the hip throughout the event. Others suggested I came off as controlling, which is not the case. I do trust him completely and do not monitor his whereabouts. Hence, I was unaware of where he was and assumed he was socializing. I only asked my sister what she needed him for because of her persistence, thinking I might be able to help instead. I've previously discussed with him the issue of him constantly assisting her, reminding him that she has her own husband who could help her. He usually replies, "I understand, but I'm right there, and I don't mind." His brother-in-law tends to be lazy, so he often views helping my sister as a favor to a friend rather than to her. This behavior is typical for him, regardless of who is asking for assistance. While I find it frustrating at times, I also recognize it's something shared among his brothers and family. I become more annoyed at my sister as I feel she takes advantage of his willingness to help, a trait I also see in my mother. My father, who is not as strong, also relies on my husband for assistance. Regarding the tone of our conversation, if her remark had been delivered playfully, I would have reacted differently. My mind had initially considered the possibility of a surprise, just as many suggested. However, her tone felt dismissive and condescending, leading to my annoyance. I'm sensitive to how things are expressed to me, and if she had indicated that she wished to keep something from me, it could have been about her own husband. I would have understood. Lastly, as for my family's support of my sister, this tendency is typical in our dynamic. I tend to come across as more monotone when upset, but my words can sound harsh. My sister is more emotional and sensitive. My brother did not take a side, he merely thought the whole situation was blown out of proportion. Oh, and I sincerely hope everyone is mistaken about her having any romantic interest in my husband. Jealousy regarding her husband not being more like mine. Perhaps, and I hope that's the case as it would be easier for me to manage. After discussing this post with my husband, I asked him if he ever felt uncomfortable around her, and he assured me he didn't. I also shared her comment with him, and he came to the conclusion I hope is accurate: more jealousy than any authentic desire. Regarding his phone, my husband and my brother-in-law have each other's numbers, but my husband does not share his with my sister. I do not feel the need to check his phone. I trust him completely. If he's driving and receives a message, he has me check to see who it is, and if he needs to respond immediately, he asks me to do it. He doesn't even have a password on his phone. It's as though he has nothing to hide. I'll provide updates as necessary. Thank you all for your comments. Story 3. My fiancé, 39M, found my 36F, second phone and suspects me of cheating. How do we move forward, and how can I prove that I have been faithful? I apologize in advance for the lengthy message. I wanted to provide as much information as I could. My fiancé and I have been together for 6 years, got engaged last year, and are set to marry in 4 months. I work from home and have converted one of the bedrooms into my office. This detail will become important later. About 3 months ago, I upgraded my phone and chose not to trade in my old device. After receiving the new phone, I discovered that some gaming applications were not compatible with the latest version of my iPhone, and the alternative applications did not offer the same gameplay. They also included advertisements, and I found the updated versions less enjoyable. Although my old phone is no longer active, I still can access all my previous applications, so I have continued to use it, mostly keeping it in my office. Let me explain why. While I work, I prefer to have background noise, whether it's music, a podcast, or something similar. This may sound strange, but background noise helps me focus. Because my old phone uses a distinct charger, I keep both it and its charger in my office to provide myself with background noise while I work without worrying about using up the battery on my active phone. Moreover, on my new iPhone, if I have any audio playing, be it music or podcasts, and a call comes in, the call notification appears on the screen without ringing. Instead, the sound from what I am already listening to continues uninterrupted, and since I rely on that device for background noise and am generally not checking it, I have missed several calls. I'm sure there is a setting to correct this. I just haven't found it yet. Thus, using my old phone allows my actual phone to ring freely, so I do not miss incoming calls. First world problems, I know, but I appreciate this system. During my lunch breaks, I often bring the old phone into the living room to play games that are not available on my new device. I genuinely enjoy card games, sorting games, and mind teasers. They serve as fun, relaxing mental breaks during my typically chaotic workday, and I look forward to enjoying this time for myself. My fiancé works in an office and is typically not around during my lunch breaks. When he returns home after work, we both attempt to avoid being on our phones in the evenings. We usually cook together, catch up on our days, and then find something to watch together, just the usual couple activities. When the old phone is in the office, it sits out right on my desk. It has never been hidden or stashed away. My fiancé simply does not have a reason to enter my office frequently, even though he certainly has access to do so whenever he wishes. I realize it may sound trivial, but this routine works well for me and is primarily a matter of convenience. Now, regarding the issues, 2 nights ago, I printed some documents for both of us and left them in my office. When my fiancé inquired about the papers, I informed him they were on my desk next to the printer. He went to retrieve them and noticed my old phone on the desk. He came out with it, placed it in front of me, and asked, "What is this?" I tried to explain that it was my old phone and the reasons for still having it. I distinctly recall discussing with him the apps and games that were unavailable on my new phone and how they could still be accessed on my old one, along with the issue related to incoming calls and background noise, all of this shortly after I got my new device. However, he seems to have no recollection of these discussions and yelled at me, declaring that it was nonsense and accusing me of hiding a secret phone. He asserted that the only reasons anyone would have a second phone are for cheating or dealing drugs. I attempted to clarify that it is not even activated, that I cannot make calls or send messages from it, and that it is clearly my old inactive phone housed in the same case he has seen for years. I told him that it had the same passcode I have always used for my phones. We know each other's phone passcodes, and encouraged him to verify for himself if he truly did not believe me. He did check it, and then sat quietly on the couch for what felt like an eternity, growing more frustrated. Eventually, he set the phone down and accused me of deleting any evidence, insisting that he still did not believe me when I said I was not using the phone to cheat. This resulted in a massive argument. I have never cheated on him or any of my partners, for that matter, and I have never given him a reason to doubt my fidelity. I have experienced betrayal from exes myself, so I fully understand how painful it is, and I would never betray him in that manner. In his last serious relationship, his ex-partner cheated on him, so I comprehend his sensitivity surrounding this subject. While I understand that he might have had initial doubts, I feel he jumped to conclusions and refuses to let it go. He even examined the phone himself and found nothing to support his allegations. I also pointed out that we have security cameras that record and save clips activated by motion, meaning I could not sneak someone into our home. Every entrance and exit of our house has a camera monitoring it, and we both receive notifications when motion is detected, allowing us to retrieve the clips on our phones. Therefore, he would also be able to see if I were leaving the house at odd hours or if any unfamiliar person was entering. Plus, the phone was never hidden or concealed. Honestly, it hurts to think that he thinks so little of me, believing that I would ever stoop so low as to hurt him in that manner. I feel like my integrity is being questioned, and it is genuinely upsetting that after all this time together, he does not know me well enough to trust that I would never cheat on him. At the same time, I feel terrible that he feels hurt, believing that I could have cheated on him. I understand why he may have been initially confused, and I hate that he is in pain. He packed a bag and announced he was going to a friend's house for the night, and he has not returned since. He has not replied to my texts or answered my calls. This feels incredibly drastic and out of character for him. However, he has discussed this with mutual friends, claiming he knows I am cheating because he discovered my secret second phone. Apparently, he did not provide many specifics, as several friends have reached out to me on his behalf, rightfully upset by the limited information they received. While explaining the full story, some have mentioned that it does seem a bit suspicious at first glance, but within context, his reaction appears to be excessive. All I really want is to prove to him that I have not and would never cheat on him, that I am devoted to him now and always will be. Even with him having gone through the phone, he still does not believe me, and I am at a loss regarding how to prove my faithfulness. This situation escalated so quickly and irrationally. I am uncertain how we can move forward from this, and it is devastating for me. I feel as though I am losing the man I love over something so trivial, a gaming, music, or podcast-playing device that happens to be an inactive old phone. I desperately seek advice on how to proceed so we can resolve this. Story 4. Aita for calling my sister a narcissist. Context is necessary here. My name is Charlie, I am 19 years old, and I am currently in college while living with my parents. My sister Rachel, who is 21, also has a job and resides with our parents. The issue at hand is that I cannot comprehend how my parents view her as their little princess. This dynamic began during our childhood, as Rachel never had much liking for me. I believe this can be attributed to our close age. Nonetheless, she would engage in petty antics, such as teaching our dog to urinate in my room, claiming that I had wet myself at the tender age of 6. She would randomly slap me for amusement, sprint away with a smirk, lie to our parents about drawing on my stuffed animals with markers, and even cut my bangs while I was asleep. Suffice it to say, her behavior has not improved. She has simply become more clever at devising ways to make my existence miserable. Currently, Rachel borrows my clothes and returns them after a few weeks, often stained with oil, food, or paint. Her usual response is a casual "oops, my bad," accompanied by that same smirk. She created a Tinder profile using my name and photos, and when I was out with my boyfriend, she sent a verification code to my email. It took considerable effort to convince him that she is unhinged. Once, she even tackled me playfully and broke my arm. Additionally, she no longer contributes to household chores, claiming she has had a long, exhausting day at work and needs time to unwind. To top it off, she is involved with a terrible boyfriend who got her pregnant and persuaded her to terminate the pregnancy by saying our parents would reject her and he would leave her if she didn't. My parents would never do that. I reached my breaking point after Rachel was involved in a car accident for which she was responsible. She wrecked her car by colliding with a pole while being intoxicated on her boyfriend's birthday. My parents did nothing to address her actions. There was no punishment, not even a call to the police. Instead, they got her a brand new 2023 car, expressing gratitude that she wasn't dead. I was livid. My car is from 2009, and it is in terrible condition. I am not ungrateful, but this is the second vehicle she has owned. Her first one broke down after she admitted to tampering with it because it wasn't the color Jeep she desired. It also had a strong smell of drugs, which our parents had to pay to remove. This occurred during high school after she became intoxicated again following the car breakdown. In recent weeks, I have been arguing with my parents, insisting that Rachel does not deserve anything in life, especially not a new car. They claim that I am a terrible sister who wishes my sister harm following the accident. I continue to tell them they are missing the point. All Rachel does is reside in our house. She isn't attending college, despite promising every year that she would. She has a substantial college fund, so she is not struggling financially. She neglects household chores, and her friends consume all our food, for which we have been struggling to pay. I then questioned my mother about her obvious favoritism toward Rachel. She responded with a half-hearted apology, claiming Rachel is depressed. This diagnosis is self-proclaimed, as she does not take any medication and has never consulted a doctor. To add to the situation, Rachel feels depressed because my mother took me to the doctor when I was 14, after I was diagnosed with a life-altering condition that will never disappear. While I underwent X-rays and MRIs, Rachel got to be at school with her friends if she wasn't skipping, that is. I exclaimed, "You can't be serious." Rachel is envious because I have a trivial illness. I then shouted at my mother, stating that Rachel is narcissistic and needs to seek professional help, as she cannot genuinely complain about my mom, who was legally obligated to accompany me to medical appointments when I was a minor. My mother raised her voice in response, saying, "Charlie, it's not like that. Rachel only saw us having lunch and spending time together." I yelled again, explaining that I never wanted to share those moments with her. Those moments were far from pleasurable for me, filled with needle pricks and being labeled as broken. That was Rachel's go-to nickname for me, as she referred to me as God's prototype, something that did not resonate well with me. She made fun of me not only for being mentally disabled, I have dyslexia and ADHD, but also for my physical disabilities. My parents would reprimand her, but that seemingly fueled her resentment toward me. I told my mother I never asked for this illness, and if I could, I would transfer it to Rachel since she craves all of your attention and sympathy. My mother then scolded me for wishing that on my sister. She fails to see that Rachel is not only physically harming me, but also mentally torturing me. My mother accused me of needing to grow up and said I should act like an adult. I responded that I would when she acknowledges Rachel's need for psychiatric intervention, since she seems unstable, and I wouldn't be surprised if her behavior was merely a means of seeking attention. I told my mother that Rachel only thinks of herself. If I were to be hit by a car, she would publish an Instagram story asking for prayers for me while claiming to be facing family struggles. She has done this before when other family members were injured. My mother dismissed my concerns as dramatic and insisted that my sister is not a narcissist. She then accused me of causing Rachel's depression. When I shouted that it was merely another cry for attention, I argued that nothing about her conveys suffering. She has many awful friends, parties every night, goes on elaborate dates with her boyfriend, and constantly shares photos of them together, bragging about how superior her relationship is to mine. I added that, on top of everything, she has both parents' attention to herself, as she drives a wedge between us, leaving me feeling isolated. Recently, Rachel has been dramatically banging her head on the wall whenever she doesn't get her way, whether it's for a bigger piece of chocolate or the first pick of flowers that my father brought us for Valentine's Day. They took my flowers and insisted that pink suited her better, even though I have loved pink for as long as I can remember. They are trying to force me to select a new favorite color because she cannot tolerate anyone else liking pink. Consequently, I was left with plain red roses instead of my favorite flowers, pink tulips. While this may seem minor, it reflects the accumulation of issues, and I am genuinely frustrated about the flowers despite their trivial nature. I feel utterly lost. Each day, I wake up hoping to fall asleep again. This anguish has led to my excessive sleeping, averaging around 12 to 14 hours daily. I wake up in the morning but often take extended naps. Additionally, I have been experiencing vivid nightmares. I have researched how to eliminate them, and it indicates reducing stress, yet I find that impossible. I am constantly concerned she will manipulate my parents into evicting me at any moment. I just wish all of this would dissipate. I realize this message is lengthy, but I am seeking advice and want to know if I am in the wrong for labeling my sister as narcissistic. Story 5. Ayo, when it comes to my husband's friend, My husband, 47M, and I, 40F, have been together for 7 years, married for 6, and have known each other for over a decade. We met through shared activities focused on historical eras, which sometimes host public events. Picture a social dancing club reminiscent of Bridgerton that organizes occasions for the public to observe. My husband, along with me and this friend, would participate as part of the event's cast, albeit within different groups, showcasing demonstrations pertinent to that historical period. My husband also facilitates a few groups that assist in practicing and are planning for these events, ensuring everyone involved arrives prepared. It's worth mentioning that my husband has a playful, flirtatious nature. I have no issue with this. In fact, it's one of the traits I adore about him. My only stipulation is that both he and anyone he flirts with must acknowledge his marriage, regardless of whether they are my friend. I believe it's a straightforward yet firm boundary that has remained unchallenged until now. Just before the COVID-19 lockdown, I encountered a friend of his who also participates in these social events, whom I will refer to as Fifi, early 30s, I believe. We met at a mutual friends party that both my husband and I attended. Several attendees mentioned that Fifi was planning to join one of my husband's groups, having previously participated with other groups. I inquired with my husband about it, and he claimed to be unaware, shrugging it off. I attempted to dismiss it as well, but my instincts began to alert me. Shortly after the party, there was a public event that my husband and I attended. Fifi was present as part of the audience, accompanying her parents. The only time she addressed me was to inquire about my husband's whereabouts so she could introduce him. This was awkward. The following week revealed that she had begun participating in another one of the groups my husband leads, as I spotted her during one of his practice classes. Again, it felt off. Then the lockdown began. Being a dedicated gamer, both online and offline, my husband aimed to maintain some gaming sessions. He often hosted them on his computer while I watched or provided snacks, as I knew many of the other players. To my surprise, Fifi was one of the individuals suddenly joining one of the games. At one point, she even joked that if my husband became too much to handle, she would gladly take over for me. Additionally, I found out that she frequently messaged him outside of their gaming and event-related discussions. I understand friends can communicate, but it began to feel increasingly peculiar. Initially, the messages appeared innocent enough. However, I soon noticed that whenever I entered the room where my husband was using his computer, he would abruptly close a chat window. While his replies to her were not overtly inappropriate, her remarks suggested a yearning for someone in her life akin to him. I expressed my discomfort regarding these comments, particularly since he was seemingly concealing them. My husband assured me he would refrain from such communication, and that any correspondence would pertain solely to games and groups. I was unable to attend the subsequent event in another state. I'm in the United States. My husband had previously done this event alone without any issue on my part. After the event, my social media feed filled with photos of friends at the occasion, alongside a comment from Fifi on a mutual friend's post expressing how much fun she had at the event. When my husband returned, I casually asked who had attended, and he almost omitted Fifi's name, which felt deceptive. Upon questioning him, he admitted she was present, claiming he was merely assisting her as a friend by introducing her to others since it was her first time attending. Later, I learned that Fifi insisted on my husband transporting her between the event location and her hotel, which was not the same as his, and walking in and out of the event with her, suggesting they were a couple. Although she drove 4 hours to reach the event, she couldn't complete the 15-minute journey between the hotel and event unless accompanied by him. This struck me as strange, and my friends who attended agreed. Since then, numerous events have transpired, including Fifi making an hour-long commute to work at my husband's job while reportedly following him around like a puppy. These are not my words but observations from other mutual friends. Fifi has also relocated closer to us, though not to the same city. She has joined nearly every group he is involved in or leads, and consistently attends practices and events to assist him during the occasions we participate in. She has entirely blocked me on all social media platforms we share, which aren't many. Her closest friend has a reputation for pursuing married men. Moreover, I recently discovered that one of the games my husband resumed during the lockdown is being held at Fifi's house, not at a neutral location as he initially conveyed to me. Additionally, I learned that Fifi has exhibited similar behavior in the past, pursuing the husband of a friend due to his flirtatious nature, although that husband managed to shut it down. Numerous mutual friends of mine and Fifi have asked her about her relationship with my husband, and she invariably responds that it's not like that, which suggests she is aware of how it appears. After I confronted him regarding these new developments, I'll admit, I became heated. My husband grew angry, insisting it was nothing, and that I had been overreacting to what he deemed just a friendship. Still, I find this friendship unsettling, especially as I have never encountered issues with any of his other friendships, regardless of gender. During a later discussion, my husband stated that he hid these matters from me because he feels he can't communicate with me, and essentially shifted the blame onto me, claiming my reaction to something he sees as insignificant is an overreaction, though he acknowledged that he could understand how I might reach my conclusions. I feel as if he is manipulating my perception, and while I do not believe he intends to leave our marriage, I remain profoundly uncomfortable with this friend. Nevertheless, I am reluctant to appear controlling or dictating whom he can associate with. We plan to seek professional help to address this situation, but I am in need of perspectives from those who are uninvolved. So, Reddit, am I overreacting?